Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome to Daily's 2A News. Today we're going to talk about the Supreme Court and the 10 Second Amendment cases we were hoping they were going to hear. Let's talk about it. Now, I'll try and break this down as simply as possible and make this video short for you guys because I know that you're probably just here for a simple answer, but it does require a little bit of an explanation. Now, we all know that the Supreme Court has not been taking up Second Amendment cases. I mean, it was nearly 10 years before they took up the most recent case, which is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. New York City, which was kind of all surrounding transportation of firearms in New York City and so forth. So that was transportation, but that one ended up getting kicked out because after the lawsuit was filed, the city of New York actually changed the law, and so the Supreme Court said, well, since the law has changed, we're just not going to hear it anymore, which is ridiculous because it really felt like the city of New York was manipulating the Supreme Court just by simply tweaking and making changes to which they could go ahead and change back again now that it's been kicked out. That's irrelevant. There's still 10 more 2A cases that were hopefully going to be heard by the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided, well, at least from what we think, to simply punt it down the road to make the decision on whether to hear them a little bit later on. So basically in our country, there's been a lot of indecision, okay, by different courts. And what I mean by indecision is there's not one unified decision as to how to rule on these Second Amendment cases. So you might have the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals saying it is okay to regulate anything that's over 10 rounds. And then you might have the Fourth Circuit say that anything over 10 rounds cannot be regulated because it's protected under the Second Amendment. And you can see that there's two conflicting decisions on basically the same issue. And so the Supreme Court might take something like that up in order to clarify something on a larger scale. And so you have these different cases that are being put forth. And again, there's so much, indecision amongst the courts that I'm hoping that, further on down the road that maybe the Supreme Court actually does decide to hear some of these Second Amendment cases because we all know that there doesn't need to be any clarification on the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the only right that shall not be infringed, and any law that you make against the Second Amendment or against firearms in general is against the Second Amendment. And so that's how strongly most of us feel about it. But still, these courts, they don't get that. A lot of them are activist judges, and a lot of them are trying to push their own personal agenda above the Constitution. And so it's kind of difficult to watch everything happen and then the Supreme Court say, nah, we're just not going to hear it right now. Maybe we'll hear it a little bit later, or we're just going to deny it or not hear it at all. There needs to be some type of clarification so that should we have an argument, like a state tries to impose some type of Second Amendment regulation, we can then go to the courts and say, no, you can't do this because A, B, and C, and then be done with it. So we need that clarification from the Supreme Court so that we can have a fight on our hands so that we can actually, strike back against all these states that are trying to enact these anti-Second Amendment laws. And so that's why the Supreme Court is so important in this. But try and remember that, just because something's heard by the Supreme Court doesn't mean that it's going to land on our side. So we have to be careful and also understand what the makeup of the court is and make sure that the people that are going to hear these cases are also, pro-Constitution, pro-freedom, and pro-Second Amendment. So there's a strategy involved with putting these in front of the Supreme Court as well. So hopefully they take it on down the road. Again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but now that they're streaming all of these oral arguments and stuff online, we can actually watch it and see for ourselves exactly where their mindset is. So anyway, they didn't hear the 10 yet, and they haven't chosen to hear the 10 yet. They're going to punt it down the road a little bit more. So I thought you guys might want to know what's going on. Thank you all very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, and have a great day.